It's the 8th of March 2022 and happy International Women's Day to everyone out there. I am Amelia Nakitimbo, and as usual so on CTV we are bringing you special programming and also bringing you experts and specialists on issues that affect women and girls, as we've been promising you. And today we do have a special panel that I may call it. Is from Makerere University, and we'll be talking about the university's journey in ensuring that there's gender equality, because the university as an institution plays a very key role, not just for the students, but in shaping the policy makers and the workforce and everyone that goes out there into shaping what the country becomes eventually. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to CTV, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you. Yes, and I may say that later on in the program we shall also be talking about one very pertinent issue that affects institutions, not just Makerere University, and that's the issue of sexual harassment and how the university, what the steps that the university is putting in place to ensure that there is zero tolerance and that that issue ceases to be. So very quickly, I'll go to you as we talk about International Women's Day. I'm curious to know, what does International Women's Day mean to you individually?
I start?
Yes.
For me, International Women's Day is a day when I get to reflect and think about the journey we have taken as women. If I may take you back to how this day started to matter to me. Growing up, I was a very, very shy person, and it was that one day when a teacher in class picked on me and asked me to speak out and answer, because they asked a question and I was murmuring in class. So she's like, "Ruth, what are you murmuring? Speak out." So I come out and I speak out what I was murmuring, and she was excited about the answer I gave. So this lady tells me to go and anchor news on assembly the next day. And this is when I started coming out of my cocoon. I later went into the areas of debate and speech. And debate and speech, I was the president of my debate club when I was in high school, and I got the opportunity to be the best at national level, and we represented Uganda, East Africa, and Africa at the Harvard World Schools Debate Championships. So that exposed me, and I looked at how young girls were living there and how young girls are back in Uganda. Being a girl who has been raised in a very typically African home, where most girls are usually shy, and I saw myself getting out of this cocoon, I felt motivated to go back and perhaps encourage a girl to also get out of that circle. So I went back to my community, and I thought, how best can I encourage a girl to come out of that shy zone and start speaking out and start contributing perhaps to national development. So I go back home and I became the Miss Tourism for my region. And this is a position that exposed me to the various challenges that girls in this nation face, things such as teenage pregnancy, things such as girls not going to school, the gullibility that exists amongst young women and young girls. This position introduced me to spaces of women activism and what we can do to make lives of women better. I remember during that time we worked with about 20 young teenage mothers we took back to school, and going back and seeing these women back in school, and this is a success for me. So I come to Makerere University. From that I got an opportunity to also attend the African Women Leadership Institute that is organized by Akina Mama Africa in partnership with UN Women. And again, this enabled me to interact more with communities. So now I'm in Makerere, I'm in my 4th year doing law, I'm the Minister for Gender in the university. And today being Women's Day, for me it is a time to celebrate that journey that women take. The journey from when you are a child to wherever you are right now in society. Celebrating that girl who is back then in the village and they have big dreams, but everything around her seems like those dreams can never come to pass. So that is what I celebrate every time Women's Day comes.
Indeed, and that's a very interesting story that you share, and that's why we are also having these conversations here at CTV. Just that one decision that was taken by her teacher to make her speak up has taken her on a journey of learning, of activism, and as she mentioned right now, she's the 87th Minister of Gender Integrity at Makerere University. It's very nice to have you here, Ruth. And we go to Eric Tumwesigye, who is also the Gender Officer at Makerere University. What does International Women's Day mean to you?
Thank you, Martha. Like you have said, I'm a senior gender officer at Makerere University. And first of all, I want to wish the women out there, my sisters, my wife, my daughters, my workmates, the list can go on and on. Happy Women's Day.
Thank you.
On their behalf, yes, thank you.
On behalf of my colleagues and on my own behalf. I have been in gender for the last about 15 years. I remember the first time I stepped in the work of gender. I started at Makerere University, one of those people that were taken on immediately after finishing school. The university gave me space to start working. And I remember going into a professor's office, and I had been assigned to work on what we called sentinel sites then. These were faculties, departments that were doing the gender mainstreaming at their levels. So the role of the Directorate, the division then, was to coordinate their work. So I worked in one professor's office, and when he saw me, I said, I am from the gender mainstreaming division. He said, no, that's for women. What are you doing here? It's supposed to be for, so you are now a woman. I was like, okay, I didn't know gender was for women.
Did you feel belittled at the time, or did you feel like, oh, maybe I need to rethink this decision to be here?
I was already a graduate of gender studies. So I specialized in gender studies at undergraduate, which I also took on as a profession for master's degree. But somehow it sent some message to me. So if this is a professor, my elder, who should be my mentor, who should be directing the university's conversations on these issues, is already looking at gender as women. And then a man who goes there is a woman. I have been called several times in my conversations in gender as Sister Eric.
Oh dear.
You get. So
that's even at the university?
In the university and other conversations across, I have worked with local governments and ministries, UN agencies, other governments outside Uganda. But the moment they see this man into the gender conversation, it's like, oh, so you have now become a woman. So my passion is two. One, it's professional. That when I joined the university, took on gender studies, for me, it was the game changer. The moment I entered the class, I was like, this is where I belong. But also the passion to fight against violence against women. The back of some of my history and the things I've observed around me pushed me into, no, if violence has to stop, if gender equality has to be achieved, it does not have to be a conversation of the woman.
And I think that's what brings us to the theme for this year, breaking the bias.
Yes.
And that's precise. Though I would like to take you back. You mentioned that you did gender studies.
Yes.
And traditionally, for a lot of people growing up, they'll tell you you should either become a doctor or an engineer, or if you're to take another course, they'll say, well, you take architecture, I think there's money in that, or take oil and gas, there's money in that.
Yeah.
How did you choose to do gender studies at university?
At university, I chose to do social sciences. And during our time, I think even today, when you do social sciences, you are assigned subjects in the course. So my subjects were economics, gender, and political science. My passion was really economics. I really, even now, after doing gender, I remember my lecturer telling me that there are not more than even 100 people who are gender economists, people who do gender but are also economists. So I wanted economics. But being a social scientist and having 3 subjects, the moment I walked into the gender class, like I said, it was a game changer.
Yeah.
I felt the natural touch with it. So I decided I was going to do economics and gender.
Yeah. I think that can speak to maybe the passion and the expertise of the lecturers who received you to change your mind immediately. I saw Dr. Euzobia nodding her head as you were speaking. Dr. Euzobia Baine, she's the director of the Directorate of Gender Mainstreaming at Makerere University. And I will also toss the question to her, what does the International Women's Day mean to you, especially in the capacity that you hold?
Thank you very much, Martha, and good morning, viewers. For me, the International Women's Day is an opportunity for everyone to reflect at individual level, but also at institutional level. What does it mean to promote social justice at an individual level, but also at an institution? Because institutions are made by individuals, and it is this individual agency that really influences a lot of what goes on in the institution. Right. So for me, the International Women's Day is an opportunity to reflect. This year's theme is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. Yeah. I am sure now many of us could be familiar with the current development discourse around Millennium Development Goals, now the Sustainable Development Goals. Everybody is talking about sustainable development. And the current understanding is that you cannot have sustainable development unless you have gender equality and social justice. Yeah. So this day is an opportunity for us to reflect. That is why you find even the government, for example, it celebrates the day, and it's a public holiday. Of course, I know some people make fun about the day, but for us who are in this space of promoting social justice, it's not fun. It's serious business of reflecting what is it that I can do as an individual to promote social justice, because it starts with us. It starts with you, it starts with me. You cannot give what you don't have. You must first be somebody who is convinced that social justice is the thing to do, it's the right thing to do, before you can motivate others to do it. And now coming to my journey, it's a long one. Yes. I remember as an undergraduate in the early 90s, one of my friends kept on calling me to go to Action for Development, which, by the way, now I am a chairperson of the board of Action for Development, which is one of the earliest women's organizations involved in the business of advocacy and promoting women's gender equality and women's empowerment. Yeah. At that time, I did not really even give it a thought. They called me, but you know, as a student, you have many things you're exploring. So I did not give it a lot of thought. Then with time, she kept on calling me, no, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then I used to have, I think, monthly meetings. Then one day I went with her, and oh my God, I found very phenomenal women, and some of them are still with us. One of them is Professor Tumwesigye, who is the current VC of Kampala University. There was another one called Professor Maxine Ancrash, who was a lecturer, a professor in the social work and social administration in Makerere University. I also did social sciences, sociology, political science. Then there was also Jamila Kamlegea. At that time, she was an employee of Makerere University in the personnel section. Oh my God, that day, I never looked back. The kinds of things the women were talking about, they really spoke close to my heart. I saw the kind of things we're talking about. That was my mother's life. Yeah. I lost my dad when I was in primary 7. We were so many in the home, 11 of us, and my mother really, really struggled. So the kind of things she was talking about, I started asking myself, but then, why do things happen the way they do? So I picked interest. And as they say, I never looked back. By the time I finished my my undergraduate studies, I already had the interest, but I wasn't sure how to proceed. So, but I kept on engaging. And I remember in '94, there was that, the constitution making exercise that was going on, that many women's organizations participated in.
Yeah.
So I volunteered to participate, and that really, really concretized the way I thought about social justice, the way I thought about, you know, how we live our lives. And I just started looking for opportunities to do further studies even in the subject. And that's how I ended up doing my master's and doctorate in the area. So for me, it is, it's a conviction. I try my best to live social justice. It doesn't mean that I am perfect, but
yeah.
I really do my best. Because for me, it defines the way I live my life every day, at home, in the communities. So for me, it's a passion. And I am very happy to participate. Now, at an institutional level, my journey started in 2000. That's when I joined the university. At that time, those very phenomenal women who were still at the university at that time,
who
and they still are.
You that day
exactly.
When you saw them,
yeah, they had come up with the gender mainstreaming program.
Yeah.
And for me, I joined the university. At that time, I had finished my master's. Then there was an opportunity. I applied to join the university. I really, you know, when you are in the university as a student, there's a lot you never get to know. So I applied to join. I joined as a registrar. And then when the program was initiated, the university was looking for somebody with a background in gender
and
that
you
would
had
help
all
to
the boxes,
start.
you had ticked all
yes,
the boxes.
so all the boxes were ticked, and then I was told, you know, you have to transfer with after 1 year to start this unit that I had no clue how to start. So it gave me an opportunity, first of all, to learn how the university functions, but also I had an opportunity to work on something over which I am passionate. Yeah. So it came really like handy, and from that time I've never looked back.
Interesting.
So I've been part of that journey, for which I am very proud and for which I'm happy to contribute in the university. So yeah, that is where we are.
Earlier, when Eric was sharing his experience about walking into that professor's office and being teased that gender is for women, I saw you nodding your head.
Yes.
And I'm curious to find out, with the journey that you've had with
yes.
the gender mainstreaming office,
yes.
How often have you come across these thoughts that you know, gender is just women? Because we're talking about gender equality.
Yes,
that means
absolutely.
there's a balance
yes.
of different genders at
yeah
play.
You see, that kind of, it takes different forms and in different contexts. For example, right now there's a lot of discourse around men and boys being disadvantaged.
Yes.
But then when you ask them, what does it mean? What have the men themselves contributed? And we are talking about personal agency towards the disadvantage they talk about. And then when you ask, in what form are we talking about? Of course, there are problems that surround the men in this field. But I think where the men have not really fully acknowledged is their own contribution to solving those gender inequalities that affect the men. Because the women were not reading on a different script. The women looked at their own situation. They said, what can we do about it? And of course, the women have been talking to the men. But the question is, are the men listening? Do they understand their personal agency? Because I can tell you, you cannot force somebody to do what they are not interested in. The men will have to see their own agency, what they can contribute in this conversation, and come in because they want to, and they feel they can make a contribution towards the mutual relationship that we all desire. We can talk. Women have been talking, but it is only until that time when this young man, this middle-aged man realized that yes, this is something to which I can contribute, that they come.
Yeah.
We run workshops. You call everybody, but you'll find you'll be having, if you're lucky to have 30% men, you celebrate.
Yeah.
They don't come. So the question is, if they don't come, there must be something that is inhibiting them. And until we know what keeps them back, we may not move much. So yes, there is a tendency for this space to be assumed to be for women.
And
but
girls.
the question is, who are the women relating to? Most of these challenges are about gender relations. He has talked about the biggest problem of gender-based violence. Who are predominantly the perpetrators? Who are the victims or survivors? Now, when one group is predominantly victim, it does not mean that they are always the victim.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you also have women. There may be few who are also perpetrators.
Men, yeah.
But on either side, we must understand what are the drivers. Sometimes it is, you know, insecurities, fighting back. You find, sometimes we don't dig deeper to understand. But the critical thing is, as an individual, do you find space to exercise your agency to solving those inequality problems? Mm-hmm. Because many times we speak, we are in the public,
yeah.
But what do we do? How do we exercise our agency?
After speaking about all that, and I think
yes.
That's where some people, like you mentioned, that people, we have the public holiday, but yes. I feel like it's, you know, just for fun, because a lot of talk has been made. Ruth, I'd like to come to you to also ask, because you're the Minister of Gender at Makerere University, what has been your interaction with students so far, and the reception towards your work? Do you feel like maybe there are some who are receiving or appreciating your office more than the others?
That's true. Just like Dr. Euzobia and Eric have mentioned, there is a general public perception that every time we're talking about gender, it's women. But again, when we look at my office and some of the issues we are dealing with, we are looking at things such as access to university services. We are looking at cases such as sexual harassment. And when you go to, say, the swimming pool department, they're going to tell you that we have more male students using some of these services than the female students. So our office is looking at creating a safer Makerere. That is the theme we are running under as the Ministry of Gender for this current guild. We are looking at creating a safer Makerere for both male and female students. But why are we looking at this? Because most times female students are not finding it so easy to access most of these things. And not necessarily that someone is pushing them out, but because most of these spaces have highly been, I should say, patronized, that females don't feel safe in these spaces. So I've been having the same challenge, that you call for an event and female students will happily come for it. And male students will only come if they are sure their logistics or anything, but largely they don't show much interest in the conversation.
So should we put a lot of facilitation to encourage the male students to participate?
Not necessarily facilitation. I think it's important for male students to identify what they are contributing to the conversation in as regards to gender. But again, it's also important for us to start engaging them. But again, as Doctor was saying, before we engage them, what are they bringing on the table? Are they sure they are not coming to take over this space? Because there is that usually assumed dominance that every time they are in a space, even when we are speaking about serious issues of sexual harassment, and we all know that in the university there are more male perpetrators than female perpetrators, they will still feel like they are always looking out for that negative thing to criticize. And yet these are issues, if we sit down together on the same table, we can actually find a better solution to. So it's true, even in my space as the Students' Guild leader, we find that more female students are willing to show up for gender activities than the male students.
Eric, I see you nodding your head because I know, I'm sure you can relate. Earlier, Dr. hinted on the urgency and the conversations. And as you rightly said, increasingly we are hearing voices being raised about the male and the boy child being left out in empowerment and conversations. But Eric, from your point of view, because I think Dr. hinted on it, that the women are picking this up, and when they're seeing this, they're doing something about it. Why is it that it doesn't seem to be the same case with the male counterparts trying to pick up issues that are affecting the boy child to raise them in the same way?
Well, I think for me, Martha and the viewers, one of the things that we should, like Doctor said, that we make reflections. One of the things that the actors should give careful reflection is how to engage the men. There is no way whatsoever we are going to achieve gender equality that we are looking for, the sustainable one. Yeah. And I love what we have added this year, yes, the sustainable gender equality without sustainably engaging the men. I have always said, I will use an example of my university. You see, we have professors at Makerere who are Banyankore. Okay? We have professors who are Bachiga. We have professors who are Basamia. You can put any tribe you want to put. I qualify as a professor, but I remain a Munyankore. I qualify as a professor, as a senior administrator at Makerere, but I remain a Munyankore senior gender officer. So the traditions that we have grown in, the cultures we have grown in, when I retreat from my office as a senior gender officer, as a university professor, I go back home as a husband. I go back home as someone sorry, who is expecting the social norms and traditions in my house to be performed as they should be. So before these men pick up the mantle themselves, someone has got to grill the Muchiga in me.
And will that be a fellow Mchiga grilling that Mchiga in you?
Two people will do that.
Yeah. The
first one is me, the Eric Muchiga, that has taken on the space. I have gone into the space because of the academic qualifications and because of the passion. So the Eric's, if they are mobilized to actually be the ones to drive the men, then we have somewhere to go. But secondly, even the women in this space, you see, you cannot have a man who is saying you can only gain respect by beating, and then you say he will take on the space to mobilize. I mean, you need to mobilize him first. Once you don't mobilize him, then he will continue doing what he's doing. So two people will do that. The first one, the Erikis that have gone into the space, the men, get them to mobilize their fellow men. And this is something that has already started. We have been discussing issues of male champions. So pick these guys that are supporting the agenda and have them prepared to mobilize their circles. But also, secondly, those of us who are actors in this space, and we have realized that you cannot prepare my wife without preparing me, and you succeed.
And on that note, we're going to hold that point right there because like Dr. Euzobia rightly mentioned earlier, that the gender issue is because there are two different parties that are relating, and we'll come back to that very conversation after this short break. You're watching CTV Month of the Woman, which is special programming that we've been bringing you, highlighting issues that affect women and girls and the society at large, because we're talking about gender equality, and that means that there are two different genders at play. We're going for a very short break, but we'll be right back.
We entertain you. amanya Shami Manja omobwat President Birabiri Mokaga akabonero court
nanga bwento naliya nafuka ikankamya aliya one but tikutema olwaleero
ali tubasuubiza ntugenda kubanga tuli mu bitundu ebyenjawulo
ani yayambadde obulungi kakoye kyakazze ku mulembe ne gown ya black erina tiara ya black tiara English of my kind tiara
I feel the beat.
You feel the beat?
Yeah.
Olokwa bakutechigero bo feeling the beat. Show bagiyita situations ko ground. This is a buffet yagala choli yako.
Vera ko CTV totally.
Don't blink.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Now Ugandans, as you know, us tuli bantu abatayagala kututegerera wadde. That's why at CTV we're working tirelessly to make that possible. Now my name is Tim Cash and alongside one DJ Frost to bring you the brunch time request Lubabu.
You make me jump like kangaroo.
I really love La Vixen. Wow, man, you're jet to bonge.
Dance for me, chicky bong, my number one. You're not you the ginger. If you know how you the cause it drop.
Now this show happens every single weekday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Let's hop in my Maserati.
Look at her go. Don't miss her glow. She's beautiful, elegant, brilliant, confident. She adorns a crown of glory, woven in grace by her story, cloaked in a gown of strength, laced with diligence at the hem. Who art thou, O great mountain, before her? Honor her for all that her hands do. Her works bring her praise. She is the Proverbs 31 woman. She'll never be in a daze. She will emerge victorious. She bravely faces adversity. Through this crucible like silver and gold, she unfolds unscathed like a phoenix rising from the ashes. She laughs at the days to come, her tongue laced in wisdom. Her children arise, they call her blessed. Her husband, yes, he praises her. She is woman. We celebrate her. We are CTV. Don't blink.
Welcome back from that short break. You're watching Month of the Woman here on CTV, which is special programming that we are bringing to you, providing a platform where we can have conversations that address issues that affect especially the women in our society, but that is to bring about to bridge the gap, the gender gap that is happening in our society. And here with me today is a team from Makerere University, and they've already shared with us their individual journey and their journey as an institution towards addressing the gender gap. We have Ruth Chitamirike, who is the Minister of Gender and Ethics. We also have Eric Mugisha, who is a Senior Gender Officer at Makerere University, and also Dr. Euzobia Baine, who is the Director of the Gender Mainstreaming Office. I hope I've caught that well. But before we went for a very short break, you had mentioned something on an issue on sexual harassment kind of popped up in what we're mentioning. And as we've rightly mentioned, that Makerere University is a place that has been championing itself. You've recently launched a campaign, which is one of the many campaigns that you've had anyway, on bringing about zero tolerance and ending the issue once and for all. And I know that your office has been very instrumental, one, in documenting and investigating the issues, but also you've put in place right now some of the resolutions in order to achieve that goal of zero tolerance. And in that report that was made, one of the things that came out, or was rightly captured, I should say, was that it happens because of the differences in power. There are power plays, and especially in gender. Yeah, so just briefly to take us through, since the report has been released, what are you doing so far?
Thank you very much, Martha. Before I answer your question, I mentioned earlier that since 2000, the university has been implementing a gender mainstreaming program.
Yes.
And this program is guided by two main policies of the university. One, the gender equality policy, which is an overarching policy that really guides the university on what it is that it needs to do in order to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment.
Yes.
And there are many issues around. There are about 10 strategic areas. For example, the first and foremost is to gender the curriculum. You know, all these things we are talking about, we are here for an hour and a half, but you don't really, you are almost scratching the surface. But if these issues, gender analysis is incorporated in what we teach across the board, we think that this is the best way how we can move towards a sustainable gender equality. There's also the issue around student enrollment. She has already mentioned about, you know, services to women. You know, the university started as a male-only institution.
Yes.
So that culture, the male-dominated culture, is still there, and it's partly why the university is trying to see what can we do differently to make sure that the university is a space for everybody,
and I think
both
an
male
evidence
and female.
for that is even in the halls of
Yes,
residence, saying that the male students have more halls of residence compared
we have
to
3 and the other ones are 6.
Yeah.
So these are the kinds of things, the conversation we have as an institution. It's not like somebody sat there and said, no, women should be excluded. But because of the historical issue around the organizational culture, the disadvantage remains, although a lot of strides have been made. Then we also want to create a secure environment for everybody. The university staff, the students, and also the stakeholders who come to conduct business at the university. And this is where now the policy against sexual harassment falls. And many times we tend to focus on it and we forget that the university is actually thinking big in terms of where we want to be. The whole organizational culture needs to change. And you know, as a university, we exist for teaching, research, and community engagement. We look at how do we incorporate gender analysis into our research. For us as a directorate, our responsibility is to support the units to make sure that they understand what it means and how they can incorporate. Now, coming to your question, the problem of sexual harassment does not only apply in Makerere, but it's mainly Makerere that has come up and say, we are not shy about acknowledging the problem, and we are going to tackle it head on. That is why we have a policy, which we are implementing. Our directorate is responsible for leading the implementation process, such that when we have, if there is a complaint, it must come to our directorate so that we can investigate. And then if perpetrators are culpable, the policy is clear on what do we do. And so far, the responsibility for coordination came to the directorate in 2018. And so far, we have investigated many cases. Some have resulted in dismissal of staff. So the university is very serious about promoting zero tolerance to sexual harassment right from the top, from the VC. The VC is very categorical throughout his term that, you know, the university means business, that should we find out, then you have no business being in the university. That is very clear. But we don't wait for people to commit the offenses. We would want that nobody is ever found on the wrong side of the law. We do sensitization. we go across the units to sensitize people, not only about the policy against sexual harassment, but also the gender equality policy, so that every stakeholder in the university understands exactly what is my role in making this a reality. Because for us as a unit, we play a coordination role. We provide technical support, but we cannot be the ones to do. We support units to do. For example, if you think about curriculum development, it's an issue that really starts from the academic department. It goes through the different levels, even the stakeholders, because we consult our stakeholders. If you're developing a program in environment, you want to talk to the people who are in the environment sector, the ministries, the civil society, the agencies who are involved, so that you can speak the same language. So for sexual harassment, we are coordinating, and the university has made strides, but of course a lot remains to be done, because this is, as you have rightly mentioned, it's a power game. And you know, in a situation where there is unequal power, abuse is very, very common. And that is why we really do our best, and that's why we work closely with the students community. Throughout the time, we really engage students and also the staff. And you'll be surprised to know that, by the way, staff find it more difficult to report than the students.
Do you mean the staff that have been abused?
Yes, because for them the stakes are much higher than even the students. So we try to use different mechanisms to create awareness, to assure people that when they report, we don't prejudge. Even for the person who has reported, we don't say you are lying or what, because many times victims are not believed and they feel they are not going to be supported. But also, we don't prejudge to say that, you know, because you have been reported, therefore you are guilty. No, that is why it is very important for us to carry out an investigation that has to be as objective as possible, so that fairness is fairness prevailed. Yes.
Ruth, if I may bring that to you right now. Part of your colleagues, the student leaders, have mentioned that they would love to be more empowered. They feel that yes, some reforms are being made, but the students are not being, the student leaders especially, are not being involved enough, because as is always is the case with victims of sexual harassment, reporting is not easy. Talking about it is not easy because of so many different things. How would you want to be supported to ensure that more students come to you? Those who are victims or those who have witnessed something, how would you want to be more supported?
Thank you so much. One, just as Dr. Euzobia was mentioning, the Directorate of Gender Mainstreaming works closely with the Students Guild in Makerere University. And because we understand that whereas they take on the administrative part, we relate more with students. So one of the things we realize is that because of the generational issues that happen, a student may not find it easy to report to Dr. Euzobia, but because we are peers, a student can easily reach out to me. So when it comes to issues of sexual harassment, what the ministry is currently doing, every time we are putting out communications out there, we make sure that our contacts are on them. And actually, students have been calling us, reaching out to us, reporting some of these things. But the challenge we usually face is that, for example, recently a student reached out and everything was there. But when we advised the student, okay, can we take this on, or you just wanted to let us know? The phone contacts went off, the student blocked us, and we keep wondering, okay, you have come to us, you need help. But what is that structural challenge that is still existing that is stopping students from outrightly coming out and reporting? So I think one, the efforts must be made, and I'm sure efforts actually being made in that regard, because these are conversations we are still having with the Directorate, to make sure that we are in that position to ensure that students feel safe to report some of these cases, because it will be pointless for us to have a whole gender equality policy that talks of making sure that the Makerere space is secure for both for students and staff members, for us to have policies and regulations against sexual harassment if students don't feel safe to report some of these things. Again, the other thing that usually happens that students do not seem not to trust the process. And I think it's usually because of the time it takes. But as Doctor has said, these are very sensitive matters and investigations need to be done to the core. So I think if we are to ask for any support, it's going to be in as regards to making students understand the process that such cases take, that it's not haphazard. You report today and tomorrow the penalty is awarded. Students need to understand that we need to go through evidence collection. They need to understand that we need to collect and ascertain whether these claims are actually true. That it's a whole process. I think what usually makes students lose hope is that they are used to quick things that are reported today. Tomorrow it must be in the news and tomorrow we must be dismissing someone. Also another thing that usually happens that when we're looking at sexual harassment, predominantly it has been student-lecturer affair. But we have a lot of sexual harassment when it comes to student-student issues. Yes. And efforts must be made in that regard, because I've looked at the human resource manual of the university. It clearly states that zero tolerance to sexual harassment. When you look at the policy, efforts, the strength that is applied to student-lecturer is so much, and we are ignoring the student-student issue because it is the main issue. And what we have right now is that students think they can only report when it is a student-lecturer case, and they are not reporting when it comes to a student-student issue. I'm happy there is a case that is ongoing right now that is student-student, and I'm sure it's going to break the barriers that have been existing when it comes to sexual harassment cases in that regard. So in summary, what Ministry of Gender Students Guild would love is for us to be supported to put some of this information out there, because students are not reporting because they don't have the information and they are not guided on the process it takes every time a complaint is raised.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. And in one of the reforms rather that was put in place was on evidence gathering to change the ways in which victims can bring evidence, especially to your office. And you also talked about the time it takes. How long does it take right now to prosecute a case or to investigate a case?
Yeah, of course, it's a case-by-case basis. Yeah. But the typical... A case is supposed to be concluded within 3 months. That is the investigation. That's policy. But of course, when we investigate, then we get into the disciplinary processes. That means that if we investigate, if it is a student, and we find that the student is culpable, it goes to the student's disciplinary committee, which is a committee, the university committee. When it is the staff, it goes to the appointments board. Now, the appointments board now, for it does the legal. For us, we are not legal people. We investigate, supported by some legal people, but it goes into the proper disciplinary hearing. It can take like another 2 months, because if you...
So that would be 5 months
Yes,
now?
that would be 5 months. And like she has said, actually that is the biggest problem. The time it takes. And you know, the law of Uganda is that you are innocent until proven guilty. All those processes, you must uphold the rules of natural justice, both at the investigation, but also in the disciplinary hearing. And because it takes so long, a victim will feel that actually nothing is being done. Like the current case happened in December, the one she's referring to. But we have not started, because we have other administrative challenges that I may not go into, but mainly around the time it takes.
And so usually when you're investigating, yes, the person has to be sent away, and I think it's only for 3 months. So don't you see cases of interference very often?
There's also the problem of even sometimes, you see, there are certain things that the university can do administratively, but sometimes they are also questioned by the law. It is conflicting because the Employment Act stipulates that you can suspend somebody only for 4 weeks. But then that 4 weeks, many times, it's not enough to do an investigation. For example, for one of the staff that we dismissed in 2020, we had to follow up students who had abandoned courses because they could not submit to his sexual harassment. So for you to limit it in that 4 weeks, it means you're doing a disservice to the victims. We had to look for them in Soroti, in Hoima, where people just abandon courses because they cannot submit to somebody's demands. So for us now, for a victim who has reported, and you know, when a victim, when one person reports, then it spirals other things. Yeah. Then you find they are telling you, you know, I went and did this person abandoned. Then you are following up. So it is a very elaborate process to investigate. But the challenge is now, for you who has reported, you want a solution now. It becomes difficult for you to put into perspective that bureaucratic process when actually for you what you want is a solution. This person has been harassing you ever since you were in first year. Or you are a staff and you cannot even work with it. The whole environment is polluted. So that is the challenge.
So who or what office would be in charge of helping your office to speed up this process? She mentioned her solution is quite pragmatic, I would say, communication. However, if we are to speed it up so that maybe there's also justice, as we are communicating, who would be in charge of now amending the laws for you at the university?
Of course, the University Council is the policy-making organ of the university, but then there are also procedures in terms of amending the law.
Have you maybe escalated to say, okay, guys, it's taking so long, this is frustrating the work of my university, maybe it might be time to petition them?
I think actually the problem is not the law or the policy. The problem is what it takes to implement. And what she was saying, if I understood her, is she would like us to have the conversation with the students, for them, one, to understand the process, so that even as somebody is reporting, they are clear about what you're going to do. Like for that student who reported, yeah. I've really had to have conversations with her, and good enough she has understood. Yeah. But I don't know whether I will have others like her who will understand it. For them, they will think we are just into this bureaucratic process of where, I mean, we are not responsive. So I think the issue is about understanding that some cases you can move fast, but some you may not be able to move fast. Mm-hmm. But the critical thing is our level of engagement with the person who has reported, so that they understand the kind of case they have reported, and then what it is going to take for us to come to the logical conclusion. Because there are many things that we can do, but the bottom line is the person who is aggrieved, they need a solution at a particular time.
And they say justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes.
One of the interesting things in the reforms or the amendment that was made in 2018 was to encourage, because I mean at university you're dealing with adults, yeah?
Yes.
To encourage especially lecturers and students who are in consensual relationships, yes, to declare that. Have you seen any of those cases since that was put in place?
When that happens, we have not seen it, but when that happens, normally it is handled at departmental level.
It's the department that handles
that.
And then,
and it's an ethical issue, because, and one of the reasons why it has to be handled that way is that, yes, I can be conflicted because this is my girlfriend, this is my boyfriend. But remember, I can also be conflicted because I'm teaching a relative, yeah, I'm teaching a friend, I'm teaching, I mean, my friend's daughter, yeah, you know, so the limit, there is a limit.
There are
so
lots of gray areas.
It really has to boil down to the person's professionalism. After all, when you are unprofessional, your colleagues will know. Mm. And I think they handle it at that level. Because, I mean, it would also be too much for us to start now policing. But on the average, people are professional. But of course, you get those ones who are not. And there was also a push where people say, you know, you should ban consensual relationship. No, actually, it would be worried if people are not making friends at the university. Yes, because that's where people meet their future partners.
Yes.
That's where, I mean, they are young, they are energetic, and they are, I mean, they are exploring, they are engaging in networks. Some of my most enduring networks were made at the university. So that is something that we'd really want to encourage. People should fall in love. People should relate, but they should never harass. That is a whole lot of difference.
Okay. And with power plays, I think, like you mentioned, that's where the power play comes in.
Yes.
One interesting thing that you put in the policy to try and end sexual harassment was an issue of dressing. Because in the research that was carried out, and there are quotes of especially male staff members who are saying, and using very interesting language, if I may say, to describe how they are being tortured and harassed by the female students with the way they are dressing and calling them all sorts of names. But I mean, the committee went ahead to recommend that should not be ground for accepting sexual harassment to happen. Eric, why do you think it was very important for the committee to put that clause that said they should not compel anyone or put dressing as a way of maybe accepting that this is why sexual harassment happened at university?
Let me start from what Dr. Euzobia just said, that we want people to fall in love. Because lecturers get married to their students when they graduate. We have one lecturer who proposed to his former student on one day at traffic lights. Just stopped all the traffic flow, and the guy proposed at the traffic junction. This was his former student. So we don't want to limit love, relationships, and other things, because this is a university where things begin. The issue of dressing, we need to make a difference between attraction and harassment. I think all of us, Eric has been attracted to someone, and there was something specific that attracted me to my wife. There's something specific that attracted you to your husband or your boyfriend. When we look at the dressing code as a point of saying, oh, they are harassing me with the way they are dressing, so when she dresses like this, I feel enticed. You are being enticed. You are not being harassed. When you get attracted to a female, to a woman, you suggest. When you get enticed, and I love the words that people use, entice. When I look at your body and I feel like I want a relationship with you, I want to go into a sexual relationship with you, then I suggest. I don't see you dress attractively and then I say, I am going to grab you, I am going to jump on you, I am going to undress. No. I have been giving people an example. I studied in Norway, in the University of Baine. And one day, this sun is like a miracle to these people. So I go outside my hostel, and we had this nice sun. And I find these friends of mine, they had almost removed everything.
Because they wanted to enjoy the sun.
They wanted the sun to burn every part of their body. So Eric, now that you are attracted, are you just going to jump on the mat and say, oh, you people, you have removed your clothes, you come and fight? No. The reason why and I was part of that team, and why the university says, do not criminalize the dress code. Of course, we discourage, and this one I want to say it as an officer, but also as a father, we discourage females walking into lecture halls almost naked. Because, I mean, this is a university. We know where you are supposed to dress as a club, as a beach, and a class. So there has to be that distinction. We don't encourage at all girls who want to walk in class because it's freedom anyway. So you want to expose every part of your body. No. They are natural attractions. So when you fall into these hooligans, let me use that word, and you have decided to expose yourself everywhere, it could be a source of problems. But we do not justify it as a reason for harassing someone. It should be a reason for you to say, wow, this girl looks beautiful. This girl is very attractive. This girl is looking well. Why don't I move in for her? Then you suggest, if you're a lecturer, speak to her. But we also encourage, like my boss said, you should wait for this student to first exit your class.
And then you can make your move. Thank you. And on that very note, we're going to go for another short break. We're still talking about breaking the gender bias and the steps that Makerere University is taking to champion that. We're going for a very short break and we'll be right back. Don't blink.
We entertain you. Ngawe tukuwate. Amanya Shami Manja, omobwat President Birabiri Mokaga, akabonero court. Nanga wento naliya nafuka ikankomya aliya one but tikutemo olwaleero.
Ali tubasuubiza ntugenda kubanga tuli mu bitundu ebyenjawulo.
Ani yayambadde obulungi. Kakoye kyakazze ku mulembe. Ne gown ya black erina tiara ya black.
Tiara.
English of my kind. Tiara.
I feel the beat.
You feel the beat?
Yeah.
Show bagiyita situations ko ground. This is a buffet kyagala kyoliyako.
Beera ko CCTV totemye.
Don't blink.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Now Ugandans, as you know, us tuli bantu abatayagala kututegerera wadde. That's why at CTV we're working tirelessly to make that possible. Now my name is Tim Cash and alongside one DJ Frost to bring you the brunch time request Lubabu.
You make me jump like kangaroo.
I really love the Vixen. Wamanya Jetibonge.
Dance for me, chicky bong, my number one. You know you the ginger. If you know how you the cause you drop.
Now this show happens every single weekday between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Let's hop in my Maserati.
The big debate is back. Bigger, bolder, reloaded. Whether it is securing your future, holding fast to the people power, or the promise of a one Uganda, one thing is certain: the big debate is on.
So why don't you respect the memories of doctors on this?
We have already addressed the issue of increment.
How many people have ever been convicted?
Okay. It's the way the politics plays in cabinet.
So now why are they asking for the statement?
Follow mainstream conversations on current affairs and leading policy debates in Uganda.
It is in our interest to handle arrested people very nicely.
Right here on The Big Debate.
Let me finalize this. I was quiet.
It's a hard-hitting talk show on development issues in the political and social economic arena. Discussions that inform policy and trigger high-level dialogue.
Now showing on CTV. Don't blink.
Look at her go. Don't miss her glow. She's beautiful, elegant, brilliant, confident. She adorns a crown of glory, woven in grace by her story, cloaked in a gown of strength, laced with diligence at the hem. Who art thou, O great mountain, before her? Honor her for all that her hands do. Her works bring her praise. She is the Proverbs 31 woman. She'll never be in a daze. she will emerge victorious. She bravely faces adversity through this crucible like silver and gold. She unfolds unscathed like a phoenix rising from the ashes. She laughs at the days to come, her tongue laced in wisdom. Her children arise, they call her blessed. Her husband, yes, he praises her. She is woman. We celebrate her. We are CTV. Don't blink.
Thank you for keeping it CTV. You're watching the Month of the Woman, which is special programming that we are bringing to you and to highlight issues that affect young women and girls in society. But today, being International Women's Day, we're especially talking about addressing gender disparity in society, and that takes different forms. And like we've already discussed with our guests, it does not just affect women, but there's a participation from all genders that is needed. And today, before we went for a short break, we're talking about the experiences of sexual harassment in institutions of higher learning, but specifically for today we're talking about Makerere University, which has been championing the conversation and trying to invite other institutions to take part in that. And they shared with us some of the steps that they are taking. Before we went for the break, there's a report that was done that we referred to earlier on where or how the different forms that sexual harassment takes place at Makerere University. And the participants who were asked, most of whom were students, mentioned things like invitations that are unwelcome to dinners, inappropriate comments about someone's body and how they appear, I think, which also ties into something we mentioned before we went for a break on how someone dresses up, inappropriate suggestions and comments, which I think is something that is very common in the Ugandan society at large. And then, sexual expressions like, someone using their eyes and mouth, etc. And then offensive sexual remarks, jokes, and even unsolicited pictures. But I think what is mostly known in institutions of higher learning is what some have termed as sextortion, which is sex for marks. But tying all these together, and especially with something that Ruth mentioned earlier of, forgetting sextortion and looking at also the power relations between students, your directorate has put in place ways of reporting these. I do not know how people are approaching you right now. You mentioned people calling you, but sometimes you cannot follow up. But there was an amendment that required the university to put in place more ways in which people who are victims or those who have witnessed issues of sexual violence can, sexual harassment, can bring those to you. How are people bringing those cases to you right now?
Right now, there are several ways how people can report. They can report to us. We have telephone hotlines. We have emails.
How many hotlines do you have? And are they 24/7, for example?
Yes, they are. And each of the technical staff has 2 hotlines. But of course, that is one thing. But you see, the biggest challenge with reporting sexual harassment is the power issue. And you talked about the evidence. The first line of evidence is the victim, him or herself. But because they are afraid, that's where we start now fumbling around the evidence. And the harassers know. They plan their activities almost meticulously, let me call that. You see, the moment somebody has a record of what has been happening and they are ready to testify, that is the critical and the most important thing. The other aspects, they come in to support. For example, if you have a recording device. But even that, depending on the circumstances surrounding each case, you may not deploy it. So the most important thing is can the victim feel confident enough to report, and that when they report, one, the report will be treated confidentially, two, they will not be prejudged, both the victim and the person who has been complained about, and then three, is there a fair process that can lead you to conclude that yes, sexual harassment has happened, and this is the form it has taken, and this is what we need to do.
The truth about sexual harassment and sexual violence cases is that they are always tricky to report, and also in terms of bringing evidence. And sometimes the evidence is very hectic. What kind of evidence are your officers taking in right now? What evidence do you encourage those who are reporting to bring?
They bring the exhibits that they have. For example, many times the communication trail. They bring the pictures, the videos, the recordings they may have.
And in instances where the thing has been verbal, how do you help? Maybe it's when I approach you to maybe get my paper or anything, and that's when you tell me what you're telling me. In that instance, how do you help such a person?
You see, harassment, it's rare that it is a one-off event. Many times, apart from maybe like extreme cases of rape, it's a continuum of acts and words. And so, like, it's not common that somebody will jump that this is sexual harassment just because a person has made a comment once.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a continuum of things, and that's why it is important for the person experiencing sexual harassment to document incidents when they happen. I'll give you an example. For example, in some of the cases that has resulted in dismissal, the cases came when the students were in 4th year, but the harassment started in 2nd year. So the question is, what was the person going through? So when we sensitize the community, we emphasize the importance of record keeping. Sometimes students come to us and they tell, you know, I was so angry, I deleted all the messages, I blocked him.
So the information has to go out there that please do not delete, however angry you are. And that's what her office is requesting for, that you help empower her office to make that communication to the students.
Yes, and right now we are in the process of designing messages that will be put across the university in conjunction with them. We want to put out the messages that really the students can identify with, but also the staff. They are not messages that are going to say that, you know, so and so, but we are saying, in case you hear or witness sexual harassment, don't just look on, come to us. Then we find a way of solving the problem. So the reporting is difficult because of the powers that play. But once the report comes and it is handled professionally, we think it can increase. And right now we are seeing more people reporting, meaning that the mechanisms that are in place, they may not be very 100% effective, but at least they are beginning to bear fruit. We have even online anonymous reporting.
You've talked about more people reporting. If you can give us a rough idea on the numbers, where you've been and what the more has translated into, and maybe what your idea and target would be if more people were to come on board. What are the figures looking like?
Okay. Of course, the ideal would be there should never be a case being reported.
Right, that's
what we would want. If we can sensitize the whole community and people take care and there is no sexual harassment, that is the best we would have got. But be that as it may, the policy came up in 2006. From that time up to 2018,
when there was an
2017 actually, apart from those cases, the occasional cases you hear reported in the media, there wasn't any case.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the media has been very instrumental in...
Yes, there has, but you see the challenge is with the media, the way they report a case, sometimes we do not have the opportunity to get the evidence that the media has. And you still, even if you get something from the media, you still have to institute your own machinery within the institution. The media will flag something, but unless you have a complainant,
Yeah, indeed.
You may not be
the
able
media
to
is
move.
not there to help
Yes,
prosecute. It's just to highlight
yes,
the
it
issue
can
so
highlight.
that the relevant authorities can
yes,
take it up.
Yes,
Yeah.
it gives us a pointer, and then to know that there is a problem here. But unless you have somebody making a complaint, you may not move much. But the key thing is that, well, the perspective I wanted to show you that the revised policy is creating the impact. But of course, the impact is like a drop in the ocean, because you know the problem is huge. So right now, from 2018, we are, if I was to count all the cases that we have handled, but you know, when we receive cases, I mean, sometimes we may not move far with them, depending on what information we have on the case. But right now we are talking about 25 cases. 25 cases since 2018. Both for students and staff. Yeah. The ones that have been concluded are 6. Out of the 25. Out of the 25, and the 4 have resulted in 2 staff dismissals out of the 6. Yeah. Right now, because of the COVID situation, a lot of disruptions, then there are also some other administrative issues. We have about 8 that we are currently investigating. We got disruptions, but right now we are going to resume next, probably at the end of this month. We have 8. Now, where we are sure that we have a case to pursue, and we need really to put in the machinery in place. Then the others, they're at different levels. You hear, somebody tells you, there is this case, and you can even see that there is a problem, but you don't have any tangible evidence for you to pursue the case. Ruth, so that's what we think. What you're facing. Ruth, when people come to you, when they report, how are they reporting the cases, and what sort of evidence are they bringing to you?
Firstly, when you look at the policies and regulations against sexual harassment, they give us 2 forms of complaints. The what you call the formal complaints, and in a formal complaint, a complainant directly goes to the Directorate of Gender Mainstreaming. And then there is what you call the informal complaints. So under informal complaint is where a complainant will come through a student leader to report the case. So it is in that capacity that some students come to me. And when they come, it usually starts off as a conversation, and they will give you the screenshots of whatever has been transpiring. But because you understand the sensitivity and how these things play out, you have to explain to the complainant that this and this is like this, and so this is like this. Are you okay for us to pursue this in this manner? And that is when they tell you whether we can continue or not. So usually the kind of evidence that students bring to my desk, it's largely informal, the screenshots of the conversations they've been having. And there you advise them on how to proceed. Well, it helps that you're also studying law, so you can guide them in that form. I'm curious to know, have you considered, for example, counseling services for, say, her office? Because what I had, what I picked up, I imagine that when someone comes and maybe they're struggling to even believe or come to terms with that has happened to them, before they are encouraged to bring up that evidence, they might need counseling. Yes, we work closely with the counseling units, and sometimes they even need emergency health services. Yeah. So we also work closely with the university hospital, whereby somebody may need psychosocial support. Actually, most of the victims, they almost always need psychosocial support. So you have to refer them to the counseling unit. And of course, you don't just say, you go to the counselor. We engage with the counseling unit, and we request them to support whoever, whether it is the students or the staff. You mentioned psychosocial support, but Eric earlier had mentioned that he's also passionate about economics. And in one of the conversations we've been having is how in power play, even the financial or the economic bit, you know, brings also plays an aspect in that. I do not know how you've seen that play out, say, at Makerere University or any other institutions. As a driver of sexual harassment? Yes, as a driver of sexual harassment.
Is it a prevalent thing, or is it, it's not always there? Because anyway, like she mentioned, when you're at university, you're young, you have a lot of energy, you want to experiment a lot. So in the talks and the psychosocial support, the economic aspect, bringing it in to empower students and also staff who are working at Makerere University.
We have done two things that I would not want us to leave out in this program. One is that as a university, we have selected and trained 100 members of staff, professors, managers at various levels in the colleges, in the administrative units, as our ambassadors. So these people are positioned specifically where they have the knowledge, they have understood the policy, they have all the psychosocial support skills that we are talking about.
Yeah.
And our students can use them as the reporting channel if there is anything, and they can come in.
When did that training start?
We started that in 2019.
Yeah, that's after the reforms were now being implemented.
Yes, after the revised policy.
Yeah.
And this is something that we want to continue doing. And of course, Makerere University, we have people coming in and leaving all the time. So as we train, some of these professors have already retired. So we continue the training. And like Dr. Euzobia was saying, this is where we also, the Vice Chancellor, it is called the Vice Chancellor's roster of 100.
Yeah.
This is where also the Vice Chancellor picks the members of the investigation committees. So these are points for psychosocial support.
Yeah.
Secondly, we have 250 student peer trainers. We call them student peer trainers. So these are also selected from all colleges in the university. They are champions within their colleges, that if anything happens, these students can be the ears to the ground. Recently, we have now brought in also the class representatives.
Yeah.
Because the class representatives, they have a very strong point, by the way. They are the closest people between the students and the lecturer.
Right.
So they are also coming in. Now, in terms of the psychosocial support and the economics, where we have points of vulnerability mainly is where when the students are just joining. These fresh students, when they are coming in, like I said earlier, harassment is not about someone being poor. Now, someone just takes advantage of some of them, of their naivety. They are just coming in, they don't even know where the hall of residence is, they don't know where they are supposed to pay money, and there are these guys who are running around to manipulate them. So what we have started is we need to put people in I had a conversation with her as a guild and the gender mainstreaming directorate to have special people branded every beginning of the semester as students come in. They know this is Eric from Gender Mainstreaming Directorate Students Guild. They are here to welcome you to the university. So you don't have to be prone to these guys who are around manipulating the students.
I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah, something that we are going to implement.
Okay.
And then the last one that I also don't want to forget is in terms of the evidence, because this is a very big problem that even some cases are dropped. So you have this victim who is really crying and emotionally broken. But then the case they have reported that you are supposed to handle, you don't know. You don't know where to start from. You don't know what to investigate. But there is a problem.
Yeah.
And like the doctor has said, the sexual harassment is a trail.
Yeah.
So we are working on what we are calling the sexual harassment evidence investigation and evidence center at the Directorate.
Yeah.
We want to look for those gadgets you guys use in the media, so which I can actually go without this microphone.
Yeah.
It can be a button,
Yeah.
it can be a pen,
Yeah.
it can be an earring, it can be something that I would just, if we have identified that this is actually a space where students have been prone to harassment, then we we will find our way of collecting that data without necessarily Eric knowing that they are actually being investigated.
They are collecting data. Yeah. Okay, our time has run out so fast. Means we've been having a very interesting conversation, but I'll encourage each and every one of us in just one sentence, the message that you want to send to the people who are watching us, the takeaway that you wish our viewers can have from this conversation. I'll start with you. Who would like to go first? I don't want to be addicted. Okay, it's okay, Ruth, take the mantle.
Thank you so much. Happy Women's Day to everyone out there and to the students of Makerere as we celebrate 100 years of this university. I pray that this becomes a beginning point for us to break many of those biases we have towards women in leadership, in academics, in all spheres that we enjoy in the university. You are great and you can do great things as a woman. Happy Women's Day.
Thank you, Ruth. Eric?
Thank you. My Vice Chancellor recently was at our 16 days of activism, and he made a statement and said Makerere is a small country in Uganda. When you enter the gates of Makerere University, you have entered another Uganda within Uganda. Everybody in this country is in that university. So my message to us as a university and as students and staff is that as we go out of that gate, let us represent the real Uganda, the actual change in this country. And I'm not just putting down the other universities in any way, but the real change in this country begins at Makerere. So if we are able to change the mindset of the university staff and students towards gender equality in the broad way, but also gender-based violence in particular, then we have changed this country. I want to wish everyone a happy Women's Day. Enjoy it and let us have peace.
That's a very powerful message. Yes, Dr. Euzobia.
Thank you very much, Martha. And our viewers, I want to add my voice to wish everybody Women's Day and to emphasize that a university like Makerere plays a very critical role in making sure that we promote gender equality in our society. And the university is committed to take the lead in making sure that the equality of today leads to the sustainable equality of tomorrow and sustainable development. And I'm happy to be part of that journey that the university is taking, and I don't take it for granted. And I thank all the colleagues in the university who help to make this journey a success. Happy Women's Day, and for God and our country as we build for the future.
And you've heard it from our guests. That marks the end of today's show. But here on CTV, we continue to have conversations and to bring you more specialists and experts to ensure that we bridge the gap. Like today's theme is gender equality today for a sustainable future and for sustainable development. So thank you for staying with us. More programming is lined up for you. Don't blink.